Today we're ranking every single course in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, starting with number 96, Tokyo Blur. Not only is this the most boring city course, but I think it's the most boring course in the entire game. All of the curves are just a little bit too wide so that it's never satisfying to drift through this course. It's entirely underwhelming to spend 90% of your time on this track driving along Tokyo's majestic highways, and overall it's just ironic that Nintendo couldn't make the only city course that showcases its own home country just a little bit more interesting. Number 95 is Sunset Wilds from the Game Boy Advance. One of the few remastered courses in this game that I would actually consider a complete downgrade from its original version. As many of you probably know, the original version of this track featured a sunset that would continuously go down throughout each lap. By the end of the course, it was nighttime. It was such a cool feature, but in this version, it's totally gone, and I don't know why. And on top of that, the track is just boring. I mean, it's number 95, it has to be boring. At number 94, we have Sky High Sundae. This track has its fans and its defenders, but I am not one of them. I think it's too floaty, I think the colors are enough to give somebody a seizure, and I think the layout could have been so much cooler than just another oval. It's really a shame because an ice cream themed track is such a great idea, but the execution here just didn't do it for me. Speaking of ice cream flavors, Toad Circuit could be the most vanilla track in the entire game. The booster course pass was honestly off to a rough start with this one, but I will admit that there is something soothing about racing on a course that's this simple in between some of the longer and more complex tracks. But at the end of the day, it's the simplest circuit in the game, and I can't think of very many reasons why I'd put it any higher than this. The Toad balloons, however, are quite majestic. Number 92 is Toad's Turnpike, and Toad is just on a roll at the back of the pack here. This track was boring back on the Nintendo 64, and it's boring here. The whole thing just feels slow-paced and uninteresting. This version has a few bells and whistles, though, that make it a little more interesting than the original version, like glider ramps and walls to drive on, but it's generally still the same low-intensity experience. And have you ever noticed that it's basically a highway, but with no exits? Do the cars just continue driving on an endless loop through purgatory here? I don't know. Sky Garden is number 91, and this is a track that received a lot of online scrutiny when it first released, and for understandable reasons. Even though it is a remake of a Super Circuit track, it does not honor the original layout or challenge of the course in any way that a remake should. I will say that I do think it is quite nice visually. Really though, I'm only ranking it this low because I think it's a bit too short and simple. At number 90, we have Bone Dry Ruins. Sometimes I think to myself, man, this track is overhated, but other times I play it and I hate myself. Number 89 is Excite Bike Arena from Mario Kart 8's original DLC. And don't get me wrong, this course is a nice homage to the original Excite Bike, and the constant tricking off the ramps can be a fun time. But the problem here is that it's basically just a glorified drag race around a giant oval, and that makes it fall a little flat compared to what some of these other higher ranked tracks can offer. At number 88, we have Piranha Plant Slide from the 3DS. This is one that I think is generally well liked, but I've never really been the biggest fan. I think some of the turns are awkwardly sharp, and I'm not really that in love with the sewer aesthetic. My number 87 might be a controversial pick, but I've chosen Dragon Driftway. Now, Dragon Driftway is a really clever implementation of the anti-gravity mechanic. Racing along a giant dragon, that's pretty neat, but the problem with this one for me is that it's just way too twisty and disorienting. It's so all over the place that you never get a sense for the actual location you're driving through like you can with some of the other tracks with more charming atmospheres. And when you do get a glimpse of what's going on outside the dragon, it's basically just a gray sky. However, it does get bonus points for reminding me of Pagoda Peak from Mario Party 7. Number 86 is Choco Mountain from the Nintendo 64. It's generally a fine remake of a nostalgic Nintendo 64 track. It's cool to see the cave brought to life in a more artistic way and fairly satisfying to drift through the falling boulders, but there's really not a whole lot of excitement outside of that, and the textures on the walls and some of the roads just is lacking compared to a lot of the other tracks in the game. At number 85, we have Rock Mountain from the 3DS, and I just think you spend a little too much time gliding through the air in this course when I'd rather be on the ground drifting, and that makes this a little bit boring for me. At number 84, we have Water Park, and here there's a great atmosphere, and I like the whole water park aesthetic, but driving it just kind of puts me to sleep. The turns are just a tad too wide or short, where drifting isn't always that satisfying. At number 83, we have Mario Circuit 3 from the SNES. This is just your run-of-the-mill SNES circuit course. It's fairly unremarkable, but rather than just negatively trashing this thing, I would say that I think some people are a bit harsh when they put this in their bottom 3. I do think there's something to like here about the drifting and the rhythm that the track has to it. It's really only this low because it's so darn simple. At number 82, we have Mario Circuit from Super Circuit. This is just your run-of-the-mill Game Boy Advance circuit course, and yes, I did recycle that opening line just now. What puts this one just a slot higher than Mario Circuit 3 is how they lifted one of the curves to implement anti-gravity. Otherwise, it's faithful to the original Game Boy version, and there's nothing more to really write home about here. At number 81, we have Mario Circuit again. This is another one of your run-of-the-mill Mario Kart 8 circuit courses, but I appreciate that it's supposed to be like a Mobius strip number 8 thing to show off Mario Kart 8's anti-gravity feature, but I still just find it to be a little bland. At number 80, we have another Mario Circuit. This one's from the DS. Look, guys, I know it's too obvious to put these Mario circuits all together, but I really don't know how else to do this. They all share the same basic themes, they're all simple, and they're all equally mediocre. I do think that this one is a tad more fun than the others, though, and the remastered Mario Kart DS soundtrack is just the icing on the cake. At number 79, we do not have Mario Circuit, we have, actually, Rosalina's Ice World from the 3DS. This track has an awesome ice theme, it's really cool to see Mario Galaxy inspiration here, but it's just so darn boring to drive through. I mean, look at this one segment here. You're just driving straight along an icy river, and you could basically take your thumb off the control stick because you don't have to do any sort of turning. I don't like tracks that let you do that. At number 78, we have Cheese Land, and I am generally, like most of you, lukewarm about this course, but I do think it's another one of those ones that's overhated. I think the cheesy desert look is a bit too bright for my eyes, and the uneven road makes for a choppy experience. But one thing I love is the absolutely broken glider shortcut towards the end of the track that enables you to pull off some pretty cool come-from-behind victories. Number 77 is London Loop from Mario Kart Tour. I feel pretty similarly about most of these tour cities, so you'll probably hear me say some things over and over again throughout the video, but I think they all feel pretty congested, and even though it's cool to have 3 unique laps, I feel like that takes away from some of the rhythm that you can get into when you play a regular 3-lap track. I always do think it's nice to see landmarks from places that I've never been and would like to go, and that's also true of every single tour track. So if I don't say that about a tour track in this video, just assume that it's true. It's not like I don't want to go to Berlin or something, I just already said it about London Loop. But generally, I do think London Loop is one of the more generic, boring tour courses, and that's why it's below most of the other cities on this list. At number 76, we have Rainbow Road from the Nintendo 64. This is an absolutely gorgeous remake of Mario Kart 64's Rainbow Road. Everything about it is just candy for the eyes, which is understandably why it's featured on the box art for the game. The problem, however, is that it's basically a glorified drag race that's over in a minute and a half. On the Nintendo 64, we got to drive this whole track 3 times. Here, it's 1 lap divided into 3 sections. It went from being one of Mario Kart's longest and most challenging tracks to one of its shortest and easiest. And for that, I have to penalize it, even though it's one of the nicest looking tracks in the game. Number 75 is Ice Ice Outpost, a track that I generally just forget exists sometimes. It has a neat gimmick going on with the dual overlapping tracks, but the Wii U Rainbow Road does this a little bit better. There are a few cool little ice jumps, but that's about it. I normally love ice levels, but this one doesn't have that winter wonderland vibe that I'm more into. At number 74, we have Berlin Byways. This track kind of implies that fascism and war are canon in Mario Kart, and yeah, not sure how I feel about that. At number 73, we have New York Minute. I love the vibes on this track, but I don't always love playing it. I think that's because it feels a bit boxy compared to some of the other city courses, which I guess is to be expected from New York City because it's literally shaped as a grid. Number 72 is Twisted Mansion. This track lives up to its name because you can't tell what direction you're heading in with all of its twists and turns. My favorite thing about this track is the spooky atmosphere. They really nailed it with that. The reason it's more in the middle of this list is because I think the layout leaves just a little bit to be desired. Number 71 is Madrid Drive. I can tell you thought we were leaving those cities behind for a little bit, didn't you? Well, We literally can't. I actually feel very similarly about all of them. This one is fairly par for the course, but I like the added weirdness of having a wiggler sleeping in the town square. Number 70 is Amsterdam Drift. Something that sets this one apart from the other cities is driving through the canals, which I think is pretty neat. And also the picturesque flower field is always a nice part to drive through. See, I do have positive things to say about some of these cities. Number 69 is Dry Desert. Now look, as a Double Dash fanatic, I think this track gets way too much hate. I'll be the first to admit that I don't love desert worlds, but this is a fine track. I love the sand whirlpool obstacle, the beautiful oasis that wasn't in the original version, and the potential for massive mushroom shortcuts. But of course, it is pretty simple, so it can't really go that high on the list. At number 68, we have Calamari Desert, which has some of the same problems that Dry Desert has. Its fairly bland desert theme hinders the backdrop a tad, but what makes this track slightly better is the fact that we get 3 unique laps, making it noticeably different and more interesting when compared to its original Nintendo 64 counterpart, and when compared to Dry Desert. At number 67, we have Donut Plains 3 from the SNES. This is a dramatic improvement over the original SNES version, both visually and functionally. Something specific that I love about this version is that little corner cut when you're coming out of the lake. It's always so satisfying to pull off. Number 66 is Riverside Park. This track was already one of the nicer looking tracks from the Game Boy Advance, and this version just took everything that was good about it and amplified it in the 3D environment. It is, however, a bit short and simple, and that's why it's kind of in the middle of the list. I have very similar comments about number 65, Boo Lake, because this track also takes one of my least favorite Game Boy Advance courses and turns it into a beautifully creepy experience. My criticism of this track is that it's a bit short and it's over before you even really feel like it's begun, but the spooky backdrop and beautiful visuals still make it an enjoyable experience. I always like when they add some verticality to these old flat tracks. At number 64, we have Merry Mountain, or as I like to call it, Mid Mountain. What's supposed to be a Christmassy wonderland is a bit spoiled by its fairly boring course layout. It's not all bad though. If you listen closely, you can hear Tom Hanks riding the Polar Express through the sky. At number 63, we have another Rainbow Road remake, this time from the SNES. It's another aesthetically beautiful remake of a classic Rainbow Road. This track maintains its SNES flatness, which can feel a bit boring when stacked up to some of the crazy anti-gravity tracks in the game, but I appreciate this track for what it is, and sometimes the shiny colors really are enough to carry a track. Number 62 is Tick Tock Clock from the DS, and I really like this whole mechanical turning clock machinery aesthetic that this course offers, but beyond that, I don't think there's a ton that really stands out to me. Number 61 is Baby Park from Double Dash. Now look, I'm generally a Baby Park enjoyer, but I do think that this version of the track takes away a lot of what I really liked about it back in Double Dash. The item-induced chaos is still here, but I don't love how you can't throw your shells over the middle divider anymore. I feel like that really took the track to a whole weird, crazy level. And I'm also not too sure how I feel about the permanent anti-gravity vibe here. There are some tracks that really do that well, and it fits perfectly for what the tracks are trying to do, but I don't think Baby Park is one of those tracks. Number 60 is Moonview Highway from Mario Kart Wii. I actually have a pretty similar set of complaints about Moonview Highway that I had for Baby Park. I love Moonview Highway back on Mario Kart Wii because of how crazy and difficult it was to avoid the oncoming traffic. But even though I'm happy to have it back, I think they made it just a little bit too easy here. Number 59 is Los Angeles Laps, and generally I think this is one of the better city courses, but I still to this day don't really understand why they chose to include an oil mining field instead of, I don't know, the Hollywood sign? At number 58, we have Peach Gardens from Mario Kart DS. It's always been pretty cool getting to drive through a different part of Princess Peach's castle grounds that only ever made a separate appearance in Super Mario 64. Plus, this version is one of the only retro remakes to adopt one of the new Mario Kart Tour mechanics of having a reverse third lap. Kinda neat. Number 57 is Snowland from Mario Kart Super Circuit. It's a beautiful reimagining of a fairly unremarkable course from the Game Boy Advance. The music is so cheerful, the penguins are funny, and the atmosphere just makes me happy. The only shortcoming here is literally how short it is. It's so simple, and I'm always left wanting a longer drive through this icy winter wonderland. Number 56 is Shroom Ridge. Although I find the atmosphere to be a little bit bland, the frequency and sharpness of the turns makes this a really fun course to drift through. through. It also has a banging soundtrack. At number 55, we have Mario Kart Stadium, and I think this is just one of the best opening tracks in the series. It has a great celebratory atmosphere, and overall just feels like the perfect way to welcome new players to Mario Kart 8. At number 54, we have Yoshi Valley, and the various paths you can take to complete this track are sort of its defining feature. And I know there's always debates online about which one is the fastest, and I know there is a path that's objectively the fastest to use in time trials, but the path I'm showing you right now is my personal favorite track to take. I don't know, it just speaks to me. I don't care if it's not the fastest. It works for me. At number 53, we have Sydney Sprint for Mario Kart Tour, and it's another city where the script I have typed out just says, insert city thoughts here. So, didn't really give myself much to work with here. But obviously I ranked it a lot higher than some of the other cities, so I do think it's generally a little bit more interesting of a track, and driving through the opera here is kind of a cool little feature. I have much respect for Sydney Sprint, even though I didn't take the time to type anything out about it. At number 52, we have Paris Promenade from Tour, and this was the lead-off track to the entire Booster Course Pass, and it's the first Tour city we got in Mario Kart 8. And I think for that, it does deserve some credit, because I still remember how excited I was to experience that reverse third lap for the first time. It felt like such a novelty for this game. And this track is also just a little bit nostalgic now, because I remember the feeling of driving for the first time on track 1 of what would eventually become 48 new additions to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and it was just a cool feeling. Over time, though, as more tracks released, Paris Promenade did lose a little bit of its luster, but I still appreciate the way it made me feel when it first came out, and the charm it still delivers today. We're just banging out the cities here, because number 51 is Bangkok Rush. I'm a fan of this one because of the golden hour sunset setting on the track, and it really distracts me from the fact that it's just another city course. Also, there's a bunch of crabs, and I think they're kind of funny. Number 50 is, okay, another city. We've got Rome Avanti from Tour. You know, there's a lot of these cities, because I've never really talked about all of them in one video. Like, this is the first time I've talked about all the cities from all the waves at the same time. And like, it kind of does hammer home just how many of them there were. There's like 2 or 3 per wave. But this one's good. Driving through the Roman Colosseum is honestly the absolute highlight of this track, though I'm a little skeptical of the fact that there's chain chomps in it. I've seen pictures of the Colosseum, and I don't think there's chain chomps in the Roman Colosseum. Also, this nighttime atmosphere just adds to the romantic vibe that this track gives off. I feel like it's one of the city tracks with the most character to it, and for that, it ranks above most of the others. At number 49, we have Cheep Cheep Beach from the Nintendo DS. I honestly like this track a lot. To me, it's the most no-nonsense beach track in the game. It's a beach. There's a boardwalk. It's a sunny day, all with a passable, drivable layout. I'll take it. In fact, I'm gonna go 2 for 1 on that beach offer because number 48 is Dolphin Shoals. Dolphin Shoals wins the beach off purely because of its more modern, intricate layout. The underwater atmosphere is awesome, and I love watching the dolphins jump about. I personally don't love this part with the pipes and the giant eel, but it's a great showcase of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's underwater feature, and for that, it ranks pretty high. At number 47, we have Athens Dash from Mario Kart Tour. Even though this is a city track, it doesn't really feel like it blends together with all the others. Maybe that's because of how much ancient history is represented in the track, and it's totally a different vibe from the metropolitan experience offered by the other cities. For that reason, I think it's a little better. Number 46 is Daisy Circuit from the Wii. This is one of my favorite circuit tracks, mostly because it really doesn't feel like a circuit track at all. The beach town sunset vibes are immaculate, which carry the course even if the layout leaves just a little bit to be desired. Number 45 is Animal Crossing from the original Mario Kart 8 DLC. I love Animal Crossing, and I love Tom Nook, the greedy bastard that he is. This track is absolutely loaded with Animal Crossing, and it has Tom Nook. Checks both of my boxes. Number 44 is Hyrule Circuit, also from Mario Kart 8's original DLC. This is a beautiful tribute to The Legend of Zelda, and it has a fun layout to boot. One peculiar thing I find funny about this track are the royal guards in the crowd alongside the Toads. They are just very oddly shaped. Look at these guys. They look like Roblox characters or something. Number 43 is Royal Raceway from the Nintendo 64. I'm not very happy about the fact that they closed off the castle grounds to us this time. I always thought that was such a cool part about the original version of this track back on the Nintendo 64. But either way, it's a beautiful course with an awesome soundtrack. Mario Kart 64 classic that I never get tired of. At 42, we have Neo Bowser City from the 3DS. I don't really like the rainy future city theme of this course, I'll be honest. It reminds me of Star Wars Episode 2, and I think that's the worst Star Wars movie. I do love the layout though, which is why it's not towards the bottom of this list. The turns are just tight and frequent enough where completing a perfect lap is always such a satisfying and challenging feeling. 41 is Piranha Plant Cove. I generally think this is a solid course. I'm a little lukewarm about the theme here, but I do appreciate how it's one of the few non-city courses to give us 3 unique laps and how it feels like a full-on Tomb Raider swamp adventure. Also, it's about time that our boy Petey Piranha got his own course. Number 40 is Vancouver Velocity. This is, in my opinion, the second best city track. Between its breathtaking visuals, awesome landmark implementation, and decongested layout by city track standards, Vancouver is a winner. I love going through the ice hockey rink, and I just love the general nighttime immaculate vibe. Some parts of it can be a little bland, and that's why it's not the number 1 city course for me. At number 39, we have Moo Moo Meadows from the Wii. It's a simple, albeit charming course, and in my opinion, nostalgia does heavily carry it, but that's okay sometimes. That's the point of remakes. It's a gorgeous remaster of a classic Wii track. Everything's happy, fine, and dandy here. Simple layout, but good vibes. The only worry here is for the cows. Oh, the poor cows. Being forced to smile through the pain of vehicular abuse. At number 38, we have another Wii classic, Mushroom Gorge. I love me some bouncy mushrooms, and this track is chock full of them. There's bouncy mushrooms over here, bouncy mushrooms over there, bouncy mushrooms everywhere. It's like playing Mario Kart in a bouncy house, and for that, it deserves all the kudos in the world. At number 37, we have Sweet Sweet Canyon. I really like this track. I think the vibes and the music really carry it, and I think it's the sweet dessert theme done very well. The layout does exactly what it has to do, and I love the donut shortcut towards the end. I also think the fountain at the end of the track looks a little bit like piss. Number 36 is Ninja Hideaway, one of the more unique tracks we got from the Booster Course Pass, both in terms of theme and function. I don't always love how tight it feels turning around these sharp corners, but the various vertical routes you can choose to complete each lap make up for some of that weirdness. When this track first came out, everybody hailed it as sort of the big S-tier track from Wave 1 of the DLC, but then the other waves started coming out, and in my opinion, it dropped down a few pegs. But for me, even though it did kind of fall a few ranks, it will always hold a special place in my heart as one of the initial few tracks that was actually good in the Booster Course Pass. Number 35 is Electrodrome, and I love that it's basically just a rave, but Mario Kart. People seem to pick this one online a lot, and I do think it's cool, but maybe not that cool. I get that it's popular, but I wouldn't put it in my top 10. Obviously, because it's like here at number 35. My favorite part though is this Jumbotron that shows all of the NPCs just absolutely locked in jamming out. Number 34 is Bowser's Castle from the base game. I've heard some criticism of this Bowser's Castle before, but I honestly think it's a really great track. It's a nice application of the Mario Kart 8 anti-gravity features in a classic Mario Kart setting. The anti-gravity adds to the hectic feeling that racing through Bowser's Castle is supposed to invoke, and I especially love this section with the giant Bowser statue just absolutely pummeling the track. At number 33, we have another Bowser's Castle with Bowser's Castle 3 from the SNES. I guess this is basically me saying that I prefer the classic Bowser's Castle vibe as opposed to the more modern twists and turns offered by the newer Bowser's Castles, and that's okay, I guess to each their own. But while this track is a lot simpler, I think it does encapsulate that magma-filled castle theme that I've always associated with Bowser. It's also one of the only SNES remakes that have seriously been altered to include substantial verticality. In other words, it's not boring and flat. Number 32 is Mario Kart 8's version of Rainbow Road. Rainbow Road is always good, but this particular version of Rainbow Road is a bit controversial. Not everyone loves the space station theme. Me personally, I do appreciate that Nintendo tried to do something a bit unique this time. Even if it's not my favorite Rainbow Road, I can appreciate the new artistic direction. Even though I still prefer the more majestic, impossible, natural vibes of the other Rainbow Roads, this track is still a fun time. I always do the shortcut where you drive off the ledge and land on the track beneath you, even if it's not always faster, and even though I do fall off a lot. And it just has that same Rainbow Road difficulty experience that is supposed to be there at the end of a Mario Kart game. That's always a good thing in my opinion. I like a good challenge. Number 31 is Sunshine Airport. This track is all vibes. Driving through the tarmac, gliding under a departing plane, summery atmosphere, yes please. It may be a simple track, but it always makes me happy. Keeping with the theme of public transportation, number 30 is Super Bell Subway. This track just is such a unique concept that I think does a lot of things really well. I think there's a general fear that people have of just falling onto an active subway line, and this track just takes that head on and makes you race through them, which I think is a lot of fun and adds a bit of chaos to the experience. And this track was just one of the highlights of the original DLC Z back on Mario Kart 8, and I still remember when it first came out. So big props to this track, always a good time. I still hate taking subways in real life though. Number 29 is Shy Guy Falls. On top of just being a generally fun course, I think this is one of the coolest uses of anti-gravity in the entire game. Racing up and down a waterfall? That's just awesome. Number 28 is Thwomp Ruins, a jungle ruins adventure that's a blast from start to finish. The quick transitions back and forth from driving on the walls make you feel like a beast, and the scenic glide to finish each lap is the cherry on top. It's a great track that just reminds me of being in an Indiana Jones movie, back when Indiana Jones was like actually good. Number 27 is Sherbert from Double Dash. This is a beautiful remake of a track that I have a lot of nostalgia for from the GameCube days. The vibes are absolutely immaculate, and the added bonus of being able to drive under the frozen lake adds a sense of adventure to the track that wasn't there in the original. I always love when the remakes are able to add some extra spice that just brings the track to a whole new level. As a certified Double Dash and Ice Track fan, this one just checks all the boxes for me. And from winter, we go to summer with another Double Dash classic at number 26, Daisy Cruiser. I've always thought it was really cool how an entire course is contained within a cruise ship, but I do worry about the safety of the passengers. The frequency at which these tables in the dining area slide back and forth indicates that the ship is rocking at an alarming rate. Look, I'm just worried about the passengers. I don't want Daisy's Cruiser to turn into Daisy's Titanic. Number 25 is Koopa Cape from Mario Kart Wii. There's a lot of great things to say about this track, like driving down the Whitewater Rapids and drifting through an underwater halfpipe. But after all the years of playing this game, the one thing that always sticks out to me is the quirky soundtrack. It's just like the defining feature of this one for me. At number 24, we have Wario Stadium from the DS. It's the sequel to Waluigi Stadium on the GameCube, and it's just a fast-paced, all-around fun time that makes you feel like Evel Knievel. And of course, Wario is just so handsome. So handsome, in fact, that number 23 is Wario's Gold Mine. I think this is just a graphically beautiful remake of the Wii version that fixes a lot of the jankiness that brought the old version down. It also makes you feel like you're riding on a roller coaster. I know people personally who don't love Wario's Gold Mine, and to that I say, skill issue. Number 22 is Wild Woods from the original Mario Kart 8 DLC. This track just strikes the right balance between charming atmosphere and enjoyable layout. The enchanted forest theme with the little Keebler's cookie elf huts is a visual treat. And I know people like this track because every time it pops up online, everybody votes for it. Number 21 is another Double Dash track, Yoshi Circuit. It's a beautiful looking remake of an absolutely classic track. I feel like I've referred to a lot of tracks as absolutely classic tracks this video, and for that, please forgive me. Anyway, back to Yoshi's Circuit. I've always loved how this track drives. It feels like every time you finish one drift, you have to immediately hop onto the next one. But I'm still waiting for the day when they bring back the underground tunnel shortcut from the original version. Number 20 is Music Park from the 3DS. I love the sound of drifting across the piano keys and the general flow and layout to this track. The timing for the drifts flows together in a way where it almost feels like this track has its own rhythm. Number 19 is Singapore Speedway. This is the best city track in the game. It has a beautiful soundtrack, awesome vibes, amazing graphics, really cool layout, and great use of all the landmarks that you get to drive through. Didn't think I would like a city course this much as they were coming out month after month, but you know what? This one really did it for me. Number 18 is DK Jungle from the 3DS. This track is a worthy ode to the Donkey Kong Country games. From all of the unique enemies and references from the Donkey Kong Country games to the deservingly awesome layout, this track was one of the best ones back on the 3DS, and of course, here it is in the top 20 of my list for the Switch. But you know what, let's stick with Donkey Kong for a second, because number 17 is DK Summit from the Wii, and this course just rocks. It's so satisfying to get launched out of the barrel cannon and to absolutely tear up the half pipes on the way down the ski slope. The fast-paced, chaotic feel of coming down the slope every single lap never gets old. And you know what? A lot of the same things can be said about number 16, DK Mountain from Double Dash. I know these two are very similar, but the formula just works. This one isn't as much of a ski slope as it is just a bouncy, crazy, rocky mountain that adds even more chaos to the mix and ends up being a classic part of every single game it's a part of. It's really cool that DK has 3 awesome tracks in this game, but you know who has other tracks that are even better? Waluigi, because number 15 is Waluigi Pinball from the DS, one of Mario Kart's all-time greats. It was super cool getting to race in a giant pinball machine when this was first introduced to Mario Kart DS, and it is still super cool today. The Switch visuals bring the lights to life in a way that the DS could never really do. Even though not much else has changed about this track, they didn't need to change much about this track because it was already such a great concept. And of course, number 14 is Waluigi's other track, Waluigi Stadium from Double Dash. It was a classic on the GameCube GameCube, it was a classic on the Wii, and it is a classic here. The visuals specifically really stand out in this remake. It's the most beautiful muddy mess I've ever seen. Stunting off all the half pipes and ramps and gliding through the Ring of Fire really creates another Evel Knievel stunt bike experience just like Wario Stadium, and in a way that not many other Mario Kart tracks are able to offer. Number 13 is Coconut Mall from the Wii. Overall, it's just great to have Coconut Mall back in the modern era, and it's always going to be a fun track to play, no matter what game it shows up on. Number 12 is Grumble Volcano, also from the Wii. Honestly, there are so many Wii tracks in this game, it's like Mario Kart Wii remastered at this point. There's a certain unhinged chaos to Grumble Volcano, though, that I've always just loved. The music sets a dangerous tone, the track continuously falls apart from underneath you with each lap, and it's just interesting to have a magma theme track that is not Bowser themed. Number 11 is Cloud Top Cruise from the base game, an amazingly satisfying track to play. I love the Mario Galaxy inspired theme and music, and just the overall cloud top atmosphere is completely majestic. Easily one of the best tracks in the base game, and I'm always excited when this one comes up on a random draw. Well, folks, we've made it to the top 10. Wow. It's been a little while. My back is starting to hurt from recording this video for like 2 hours. So let's just get through this. Number 10 is Toad Harbor from the base game, one of Mario Kart 8's instant classics, in my opinion. It's bursting with charm, it has an awesome layout and theme, and it's got a fun shortcut. It's got everything, guys. I love this track. I think it's one of those ones that I really do associate with Mario Kart 8 in the same way that I associate like Coconut Mall with Mario Kart Wii. Number 9 is Ribbon Road from the Game Boy Advance, one of the first instances of really taking an old Game Boy Advance track and turning it into just an absolute work of art. The playroom aesthetic is super charming, the course layout is incredibly unique. It is equal parts fun to drive and smile-inducing, and in my opinion, that is just the perfect recipe for a great Mario Kart track. Number 8 is Yoshi's Island from the Booster Course Pass. This was one of the biggest surprises in the Booster Course Pass. It's a beautiful homage to Yoshi's Island that oozes cartoonish joy at every turn. It truly feels like you're transported to a different universe in this track, and for that, it's one of my favorites. And for the love of God, to this day, I still cannot hit that floating cloud at the end of the track that gives you that last shortcut. I think it's mostly luck. I don't think it's a skill thing, but maybe that's just me coping with my inadequacy. Number 7 is Maple Treeway from Mario Kart Wii. The vibes here are just almost unmatched. What else am I really supposed to say about this one that you haven't already heard a million other people say? This is one of those tracks that has always just been absolute comfort food. The fall vibes are immaculate, and every time I drive through it, I feel all warm and fuzzy inside. I should probably get that checked out. Number 6 is Rainbow Road from the 3DS. This Rainbow Road is absolutely stunning. From the drifting along the pure light refracted road to circling Saturn's rings to bouncing on the moon, this takes the outer space Rainbow Road theme and just absolutely nails it. Though I will say I wish it was just a tiny bit longer. I would drive this whole track twice rather than making it into like 3 separate laps within the one lap. I just think it's that good of a track. Let me drive it more. At number 5, we have Mute City from the original DLC, and this track is an absolute banger. It's a perfect homage to F-Zero. Between the coin-generating pit stop and the constant speed boosts, it really feels like you're flying through the track in a way that you would in an F-Zero game. The excellent use of anti-gravity and the futuristic city atmosphere are the icing on the cake. I also love the Super Smash Bros. Inspired Captain Falcon ads that say, "Show me your moves!" Was that a good Captain Falcon? Let me try again. Show me your moves! Show me your moves! No. I will never understand why they did not add Captain Falcon to this game. He would have been so much better than the Inklings. You can't tell me otherwise. At number 4, we have Mount Wario from the base game, and this is one of the best tracks in the game that doesn't adhere to the traditional 3-lap format. From getting dropped out of an airship to racing through a dam to charging down a ski slope, Mount Wario is a full-blown snow day adventure. I love it, and by my count, it is actually the best track in the original Mario Kart 8 base game, minus the original DLC and everything else that came after it, like just the original 16 tracks. This is my favorite. And you know what? Let's just circle back to F-Zero for a second, because Big Blue is number 3, and it's another absolute masterpiece of a track. Everything I said about Mute City absolutely applies here, but add in the fact that this track is also a straight shot through 3 unique sections instead of having 3 identical laps. It's like Mount Wario, but way faster and way more exciting. I can totally see why they used it to anchor out the original DLC pack back on the Wii U. Show me your moves! Falco! punch. People can probably hear me in like the other apartments right now, like, what the is this guy doing? At number 2, we have Rainbow Road from the Wii. I know it's basic to have this one towards the top of a list, but I'd be completely lying to you if I said it was anything else. Rainbow Road from Mario Kart Wii is a Hall of Fame level Mario Kart track, and this remaster only continues its legacy. From the beautiful, bright, outer space themed visuals, to the heightened difficulty, to the triumphant soundtrack, this is a perfect celebration to anchor out the greatest compilation of tracks in Mario Kart history. But even so, it's not number 1. In my opinion, the best track in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is Squeaky Clean Sprint. I absolutely love this track. I think the theme is so original, so charming, and executed so well. Driving through the drain of a bathtub, getting propelled into the air by a bidet, implementing that Honey I Shrunk the Kids vibe on a level that no other track has been able to do. Even the music is awesome. It just feels like everything that a cartoony kart racer is supposed to be. Just a really wacky, weird concept implemented in such a perfect way. I really just don't have anything that negative to say about this track, and that's why I have it here at number 1 on the list. It's my personal favorite, and it's one of the tracks that just I'll never get tired of. And that wraps up my 96 course Mario Kart 8 Deluxe rankings, and honestly, I want to know what you think. Point out in the comments below things that you thought I was just totally off base on, and maybe some things that you think I did really well with. Honestly, it's tough to rank 96 courses. I don't even think I'm going to watch this back and agree with my own rankings. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.